During our coffee breaks on the veranda, my colleagues and I often engage in lighthearted conversations to take a break from the intense brainstorming at work. Today, one of our young colleagues joyfully announced that he was getting married. He excitedly described his soon-to-be wife as a perfect and loyal partner who would never betray him. Naturally, we all congratulated him and shared our own stories about faithful partners. As my colleagues listened in shock, I couldn't resist sharing my own tale about a faithful and saintly girl. It happened about a decade ago during my final year of university. Without a diploma or experience, finding a good job was a challenge, so I had to hustle. I did everything I could. I wrote custom visas and repaired computers at home. At night, I worked at an old-timer parking lot. It was the only way I could support myself and be there for my beloved Anyepka, who was not just my girlfriend, but my future wife. We rented a rundown apartment on the outskirts of town, and my biggest dream was to provide her with a better place to live, have a beautiful wedding, and go on a trip together. After all, my sweet and delicate Anyepka deserved nothing less. She too studied during the day and worked late nights as a waitress in a bar. It would take her over an hour to reach home by bus, and I couldn't even accompany her or walk her home. I remember her complaining about a guy who rode the bus with her every day and continuously stared at her. One day, this persistent stranger chased after her at the bus stop, desperately trying to get her attention. She couldn't hear him since she had her headphones on, but he persisted. In the dimly lit surroundings, with no one else around, he managed to catch up to her. To our surprise, he had been running after her to return her forgotten umbrella from the bus. This act of kindness from a stranger left a lasting impression on both Anyepka and me. It reminded us that there are still good-hearted people in the world, willing to go the extra mile for someone in need. So, as I shared this story with my colleagues, I couldn't help but feel grateful for that stranger's gesture and the reminder that faithfulness and kindness can be found in unexpected places. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking to myself, thank goodness I'm not crazy. Despite my worries about my beloved returning home alone and late at night, there was nothing I could do about it. My work often kept me out late into the night as well. Anyepka felt sad that we didn't spend enough evenings together or communicate enough, but deep down, I believed she understood the demands of my job. Over time, she seemed to have accepted it, and although she would sometimes come home later, her voice on the phone remained kind and enthusiastic. She started spending more and more time on social networks, but I attributed it to wedding preparations. However, one night, my partner unexpectedly asked to switch shifts with me. I had already arrived at work, but he pleaded with me, explaining that he couldn't get out of another commitment. Seeing an opportunity to surprise Inyuta, I agreed and left work with a smile, without telling her anything. As I made my way up the stairs to our apartment, struggling not to drop the bottle of wine, I noticed some commotion behind the door. I could hear Anya's voice, as well as another unfamiliar voice, but I couldn't make out their words in my surprise. I stood there, frozen for a moment. The door swung open abruptly, almost hitting me in the forehead. A disheveled stranger, whom I had never seen before, spoke affectionately, assuring Anyuta that he would see her the next day. He confidently walked past me, seemingly unaware of my presence. And there, in the doorway, stood Inyuta in a silk robe, worn so carelessly that it barely covered her body. She had a look of shock, her wide eyes staring at me. Sensing that something was wrong, the guy quickly picked up his pace and disappeared from view. And then, in a predictable manner, my fiancée burst into tears, professed her love, and pleaded for forgiveness, admitting that she had made a mistake. She attempted to kneel, but then suddenly composed herself, wiping away her tears and declaring, "Why should I apologize? It's your fault. You're the one to blame." I was taken aback, experiencing a second emotional shock that evening. She shouted that I hadn't paid any attention to her, showing no interest in her inner world, fears, and problems. According to her, we didn't communicate enough, leading her to find solace in the company of another man she met on the bus. He was attentive, listened to her, and offered unwavering support. Their bond grew stronger and eventually led them to intimacy. In that moment, I was relieved that I hadn't arrived half an hour earlier, or else someone would have discovered their affair. As you can imagine, I ended the relationship, but our mutual friends remained in the picture. Without intending to, I became aware of snippets of Anja's life. She started renting a room with a friend. However, as soon as the guy realized she no longer had her own place to meet, his interest faded and the relationship dissolved. Anyuta faced severe financial struggles, forcing her to quit her studies and find another job. She never rode that bus again. I have no idea how her life has unfolded since then. However, at our mutual friend's wedding, I witnessed her attempt to catch the bouquet, indicating that she had yet to marry. Personally, I believe in love and am content in my own relationship. It has been a long time since I felt the need to dwell on what happened. Although I must admit, initially it was incredibly difficult. Nevertheless, I remember this story every time I am told about exceptional, loyal, and virtuous women. So guys, share this tale with someone else, but not with me.